Hello, and welcome to Money Matters TV and our segment called Growth Stories, where we hear from entrepreneurs and advisors who share secrets and advice on what business owners need to know to grow. My name is Mike Verrill, and I'm your host. I'm Vice President with the Sharp Financial Group. We're an integrated financial management firm, and we've, in a unique way, have unified business advisory, accounting and tax, investment banking, wealth management, and family office services for business owners and their families to help them achieve extraordinary things. From time to time, issues involving life sciences, healthcare, technology companies may be discussed on this show. Those discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, before entering into any financial transaction, you should seek advice from your financial advisor before moving forward. I am joined today by my co-host, Rija Beares. Rija is Vice President with CBRE, a global real estate consulting firm. Rija heads up the media and technology practices in the Philadelphia office, where she helps high-growth companies match their real estate strategy with their business strategy. Rija also serves on the program and outreach committees for an organization called Tech Girls. Tech Girls helps expose middle school age girls to careers in technology. Rija, as always, thank you for joining me for Growth Stories, and it's great to see you.
It's great to be here, Mike. Thank you.
So a lot going on since we talked. I think we are, there's a vaccine rollout. We had speculated that about the last discussion. That seems to be moving forward. I think people maybe can start to see light at the end of the tunnel. Not sure exactly when that will be and when we will feel a little bit more normal. But I was curious, what are some of the things you're seeing now in the real estate industry and the metrics you measure to get an indication of where the economy might be growing? Should we expect growth in the first half of the year, or are you continuing to see laggard indicators?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, Mike. When we went into the pandemic, we were at an all-time high for fundamentals in commercial real estate. Rents were high, vacancy rates were low, and absorption was positive. And what we're seeing now is that companies are accelerating a trend that had started pre-pandemic. And that trend was that more remote work was being introduced, and companies were bringing in activity-based work. Both of those result in smaller footprints for companies. So what has now occurred is that trend gets accelerated, and what you see is companies that are renewing, they're typically downsizing at this point, bringing more vacancy to the market. And if companies are mid-lease instead of towards the end of their lease, they're putting sublease space on the market.
Okay.
So both of those things put downward pressure on rents. So we start to see fundamentals such as high vacancy rates and rents going down. On the flip side, the companies you've just mentioned, life sciences, healthcare, technology, are in growth mode right now in a lot of cases, as well as e-commerce and supply chain. So the crystal ball is, how's that balance occur? So how many quarters are we looking at for downward pressure? And I think this Philadelphia market is poised for quick recovery.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess some of that recovery will include real estate asset classes that maybe weren't leaders in the past, but will jump up, like distribution space. I can imagine it can be considered to be at a premium at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Anything regarding supply chain is really at a premium.
Great. Well, obviously you mentioned a crystal ball, and we'd all love to have one, but I think there's still a lot of unknowns, but it's always great to hear what's going on, because I think it does give us some window into some of the future economic impact that we can expect, and maybe Philadelphia will be spared a deep recession and like you said, rebound quickly. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So another great guest today. We always seem to get lucky and line up some terrific guests to interview and meet. The guest we have today, she built her resilience foundation at the age of 9. So I'm really looking forward to digging into that story. But before we do, we have a question from one of our viewers. As always, we'd love to take questions from the viewers. And Fred Anderson has written in and asked, is there a migration of people from the city to suburb areas due to health issues in the commercial real estate business. So, I mean, you can look at two aspects of that, Rhea. When you see a migration of people, are people moving from the city to the suburbs, or people picking up and living in the city, but maybe working in the suburbs, looking to get out and work into a more suburban environment? Both obviously can impact the real estate business, but curious to your insight to help Fred answer this question.
Sure, and that's a great question, Fred. So one, anecdotally, you're hearing a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds moving back home if they're in urban locations with mom and dad. So I think that's a trend that we've all heard about. But from the commercial real estate standpoint, the reality is there are not that many people in the office right now because of the current environment. So at the beginning of this, maybe a couple of months into pandemic protocol, I had a hypothesis that we were going to see a lot of satellite offices come off the urban hubs. But that trend has really not transpired in any major way. Smaller tenants certainly have taken kind of what we call plug and play space in the suburbs, ready to go. You can just move right in, but nothing major in that migration right now.
Great, interesting. Well, hopefully that helps answer your question, Fred. We always love hearing from our viewers. To send questions for a future episode, please stay tuned, and we'll explain to you how to send your questions to Money Matters TV.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our hosts and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
I mentioned it in the intro. Resilience as a characteristic is considered to be an important quality to achieve success. There's actually been studies on it, and it's one of the key indicators of who may or may not be successful. Confronting challenges and overcoming them are milestones of accomplishments in the career of an entrepreneur, right? So overcoming that, resilient, failures, growth, all part of being an entrepreneur. Coming to a new country, speaking only a foreign language at the age of 9 were the incredible challenges that are facing our guests that we're going to talk to today. And that helped her build the foundation that helped her launch her career and her success. So we are very excited to have on our show Candida Toccia Seasock. She is the founder of Executive Leaders for Advisory Boards, or ELABs. Candida, Rhea and I are very happy to welcome you to Grow Stories, and so thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very pleased and I'm very honored.
Joining us today, Candida. One of the things that I'd love to know is what made you form ELAB?
Throughout the last 15, 20 years, I've been seeing more from my clients of wanting to have an advisory board, which is different than a board of directors. So advisors could be 2 or 3 specific to that company, to that CEO's culture and industry. And I had a lot of contacts in the CEO world, and I decided that I should ask them the question whether there should be a group focused only on helping clients through advisory boards or being advisors at clients. I wrote to 30 of the CEOs, and 30 of them answered that same day, which I think, 6-7 years ago, it was unusual even to get such answers such fast. And the answer was, get it started. So it was an idea. People have done research in the industry about the organizations, which is Executive Leaders for Advisory Board, and there was nothing like it. But before that, and I still have CTS Associates, which is an advisory company to CEOs. So it stemmed from that idea.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing sharing that with us. Happy to learn about E-Labs and CTS. So we mentioned in the intro that you came to this country when you were 9. That must have been exciting and scary all in the same time. But I was wondering if you could share a little bit of that background. Who did you come here with? Where did you come from? When you got here, where did you go? Give us a little insight into that. It'd be great.
Sure. I was born in Milan, Italy, and my mother had gotten passage for me and my sister through sponsorship of another sister to come to America. And she felt in America we would have much more of an opportunity. Now I'm going back to 1955, even though the war was gone for 9 years, it took forever to rebuild cities and get jobs. And I'm talking about World War II, just to be clear. So she came here because of her sisters. She had 2 sisters here, and she came from a family of 14 sisters. My grandfather had 14 girls. And the family joke was that my grandmother said to my grandfather, "Enough is enough. No more girls, no more children. 14's enough." Today we know that it's the male that drives, whatever it's a female or a male, but then they thought it was the female. But, and I loved all the aunts that I did get to know. They were just wonderful human beings, and they were all some sort of entrepreneurs, including on my father's side of the family. So my mother moved to Milan, met my father, who was a lawyer and a general. And he also came from an entrepreneur family. And I think that's between the 2 generations. I think I just had that in my blood.
You're born to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. As my high school yearbook says, blazes our own trail. And I think they were a bit correct.
That's great.
That is great. So give us a sense of what you were like as a child growing up.
Okay. Well, I didn't speak English, so the students would teach me English. I went to Catholic school, both grammar school and high school. I tended to, run to my own song. I loved running. I only stopped running about 10 years ago, so I ran races all the time. And in my days, it was not a thing women did. So my mother would get a lot of phone calls, and she worked in a factory like most Italians or most immigrants. They'd work in factory kind of work. And she made a deal with me that as long as I stopped running a block before the convent, she wouldn't get any calls from the nuns. And if I stopped a block before home, she wouldn't get any calls from the ladies that were at home and didn't have to work because their husbands worked. So
seems like a reasonable deal.
Yes, and that's how I think my independence was right there.
Yeah,
I abided by her rule and kept right on going, though I kept running.
Yeah. I think entrepreneurs learn that, right? They learn to play within the parameters, but
right.
Push the boundaries within those parameters.
Yes.
So you were learning that at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think the quote in your yearbook sums it up. But you were this rebellious person, blazing your own trail. Coming out of high school, what was your plan? Did you have big plans? What did you want to do coming out of high school?
I think I molded my career as I went along. So when I came out of high school, I basically said to my mother, I don't want to be poor anymore, because poor in those days was just the fact you didn't have a lot of money, but we were basically trained to eat well and to dress well and to be groomed and all that. But I didn't want to be poor. So my aunt gave me some money to go to IBM tabulating schools, and I didn't have to speak English well to a computer. So, and we learned pretty fast that I could take things apart and put them back together without a manual. So what sometimes some gifts you might not have, you might have other gifts you don't realize. And so I went to work for IBM, and it was a gentleman there who, I'll just mention his first name. His first name was John, and he said, "You belong in an organization that you could have a lot more responsibility." And he got me my first real corporate job in being the director of the computer department, first and second shift. So And it was great because, again, my English was not that good. I learned, as you go through life, you learn more, but you still have a heavy accent. And again, computers don't talk back, and I knew what to do without a manual until the engineers would come and fix the computers. And learned a lot from that first job. And when I couldn't improve my career at that company, which I have a lot of good stories about, I just would leave and get another job, and I would continue doing that to move ahead in my career.
That's interesting. I think a lot of people look to do that these days, right? They reach a point and instead of getting stuck in that position, they move on to a new company. So you, as always, a trailblazer, right? I think you were setting that kind of model up long before it probably was popular. Everybody was looking to, work for IBM and get the gold watch at retirement. So that's really
that's a good catch, Michael, because I was blazing that trail before it was popular. I just wouldn't stand still just to stay in a company for a paycheck.
Right. That's excellent.
Yeah, it is. IBM is a great foundation for so many successful entrepreneurs.
Yep, it was.
In your roles there, what did you learn and how did it prepare you for your next challenge?
At IBM, I didn't stay there that long because I went to a company which is now called Bergman, but at that time, it was not called that. Bergman is a combination of several companies throughout the last 40 years. I learned to ignore people that criticized me. I think I've learned that all my life. Just take the criticism, try to understand where it's coming from, but don't let it take you down, but let it make you better. So I learned from IBM and from all the companies till I went to work for Deloitte that criticism sometimes was given not to help you, but to destroy is not the word, but
hold you back,
make you uncomfortable, right? Make you uncomfortable because you were different.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out a best way to say it. But when I went to Deloitte, the partner in charge there, I had a bookkeeping company before that. The partner in charge, he had 2 daughters, so he knew how tough it was for a woman to make it in the accounting world. And plus, I had the technology background, and that was still a man's world. And then, you go to AICPA meetings, and it's all males, and you're short, and you're only female. You can kind of like mash into the wall, which worked out well. But I learned a lot, and he was a great mentor. In those days, I don't think we used those words, but what it came down to is that he made me come out of my own shell.
And you think a big part of that was because he had daughters and he understood the importance of help a woman blaze a trail, if you will, again, use that term, but in traditionally male focused
world
careers like technology and, like you said, accounting.
Yeah.
It must have been very difficult to forge your own way there.
I found, again, and I think I even do that today, that if somebody doesn't accept me for whatever reason, I'm not going to judge them for whatever reason. I'm just going to find someone that does accept me.
Right.
So, with my private firm, I advise CEOs. I'm a private confidential advisor. And if somebody says no, I always feel hurt. Human beings do feel hurt. But I go on. I don't let that affect me. For me, I have to understand why they say the thing and why they don't accept what I may be able to offer them.
And there was
stay positive.
Yes, that's a great bit of advice. Stay positive. Keep your chin up.
It's not about you. It could be the other person, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. Just across life. One of the stories that I think you have is a real Phoenix story, just like that, right? Tell us about how you ended up starting your first business.
I was working for a company as a controller, and the person I reported to was making me feel extremely uncomfortable working there. So I went to the owner, and the owner said, I'm not letting the CFO go. You'll have to find another job. So, and he says, don't use him for a reference, use me as a reference. And I was driving down the street trying to figure out how am I going to support myself. I was not one to go to unemployment because I was very independent. And I saw a sign that says, looking for someone to pump gas. So I drove into the gas station and asked them if I could get the job. They said I can tune up cars. I had a dear friend that taught me how to tune up cars, old cars, new cars. And the guy said, well, you know, women don't do this job. And I said, well, I know how to tune up cars. He goes, you know what, I'll try you out. Because you're a woman, I'll give you 25 cents more. So I got the job, and winter came. It was 3 months later, winter came, and it was cold. And me and the cold don't agree. And I guess we didn't agree when we were young. And I was walking in Haddonfield, crying, I guess, trying to figure out how am I going to buy Christmas presents when I could just about make it. And I walked into a store, and the woman was trying to balance the books. And I said to her, why don't you look at this? And why don't you look at that? And she says, you want a job? And I said, doing what? She says, bookkeeping. And I realized at that point that I did not like bookkeeping, but I was good at it. And it was better than being outside pumping gas. So I said to her, sure, what do you know, I really didn't care what she was paying, but it was inside. The warmth alone was worth it. Yes. And she said, if you do a great job for me, I'll introduce you to all the store owners that need a bookkeeper. And that's how I started the bookkeeping business. And then I applied to college because too many people were asking me about, you know, do you have a college degree? And I said, So in 78, I applied to college. And in 79, I got the job at Deloitte. And without a college degree, with the intent that I was going to finish it and get my CPA. And that's when I met Ralph Newkirk and the managing partner, and started on their road. So I helped them in things that I could do. I couldn't sign off on anything, but I could actually do a lot of stuff. And including audits of banks.
I'm sorry.
Bank audits were interesting. That's all right. Bank audits were very interesting.
But you also got involved in some of the technology practice area, didn't you? There,
I did when after Deloitte, and I had made a deal with them that I would be a CFO for a couple of years with this company. I decided I might have been good in accounting, and I might have been able to find a needle in the haystack, but it was not my passion, and it was obvious to Mr. Newkirk. So he helped me. He wanted to know what I wanted to do. He said, I want to start a technology company, selecting and implementing technologies. He introduced me to all the accounting firms. I automated them, automated their clients. And then it was that firm 10 years later that I sold into Grant Thornton.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was the second accounting firm.
What were some of the challenges running your own technology? I mean, that was at the very beginning of technology implementation firms, right? Accountants probably were a little afraid of bringing in technology like that into the practice.
Yeah.
They were afraid, but they realized their clients were buying order processing system, purchasing, and accounts payable, and all of that. And they would rather have somebody that they knew go in there and automate them rather than a stranger they didn't know.
Right.
Or a strange company they didn't know. And I think that's what really propelled it to move. Because I would also automate the accounting firms, as minor as it was in those days. I mean, that a law firm was usually the last adopters in new technology in those days, right? So, you know, it was interesting conversation with the managing partners.
Right. You're going to do what?
Right. And one of them finally said, I'm so tired of arguing with you, just go do it.
That's that resilience, right?
That's right.
Quality.
Argue long enough and well enough that you have them convinced.
So you've been around some great mentors, and you've had some opportunity to mentor yourself. When you're working with somebody as a mentor, what qualities, like if somebody wants to get a mentor and really get a lot of it, what should they look for? How should they approach that? Who should they look for in a mentor? How should that relationship work?
I'm more of an advisor than a coach and a mentor, because to me, a coach is someone that has a set pattern and does certain things in assessment. My assessment is my assessment of the client. I'm more of an advisor of strategically looking at companies and helping them think outside of themselves, and also helping them understand that employees, if they don't understand it fully, but fully help them understand that the best assets are their employees and the talent they hire and the clients they have or the customers they have. So I'm more of a private advisor. I'm not the most patient person in the world. So a coach is usually a very patient person. I am not.
Okay.
And sometimes with my clients, they'll say, "You're rolling your eyes. I guess I'm not listening to you." And I'll go, "Yeah, that's about right." So
You're delivering the hard message.
because if you're advising a lot of companies, or if you had businesses, or if you've been in corporate America, you learn more from failures than successes. Successes stick with your reputation, and hopefully the failures never stick with your reputation. But to do that, you're able to see things that a lot of my clients that are younger than me do not see. So sometimes it's, I guess, my eyes rolling or my hands moving around, that they understand that they have to look at things differently.
Great. Rita,
That's great. Yeah, so our last question for you: are entrepreneurs born or made?
I think entrepreneurs, and I thought of this from your printout, I read it a few times because I wanted to think it out. Entrepreneurs are born. What makes them is the environment and how they see the environment to better themselves through their career, and everything that's around them, because not just their career, you're influenced by organizations you belong to, by people that you associate with. Entrepreneurs are born. Something has to light that fire to develop it further and further. Entrepreneurs normally do not like to work for corporate and follow a standard environment. They can lead in corporate, but sometimes they're not very good soldiers. They make very good generals, but not very good soldiers in a sense.
Yeah, that's great perspective.
Yeah, hopefully very helpful. Candida, this has been great. We've thoroughly enjoyed the time. Hopefully our viewers got some very important nuggets out of a woman who has got a strong conviction, and you've worked extremely hard to create the success that you have. So congratulations.
Thank you.
The next guest on Money Matters TV will be Kenneth Milner, an attorney, special counsel at Kraut Harris. As a reminder, you can download the podcast for iTunes and Stitcher, as well as see programs on our YouTube channel, money-matterstv.com. Thank you for joining us for Growth Stories.